on KUCI 88.9 FM in Irvine. I'm your host with the most, Ash Kumra. I love saying that. I don't know.
It flows, man. It flows.
Flows, yo.
Gotta warm it up.
Gotta warm it up. So I have here a good friend of mine. I really mean it. Josh and I developed a very good friendship. We've had we have a collaboration on another venture, and through that I've gotten to know him. And I've been inspired by not only his mindset and his own way of living and being, but how he has a magnificent relationship. And in my opinion, one of the most amazing kids I've ever met. I was telling Josh yesterday that I was watching the show called The Mandalorian, and like just one of the babies in the show is like this little baby Yoda, like of the Yoda race, and he's a 50-year-old, but in Yoda years that's actually 5 years old, I think, because when Yoda in Star Wars Return of the Jedi was like 900 years, it felt like he was a 90-year-old person. So he was 50 in human years, but he was acting like under 5 years. It was very interesting. So anyways, long story short,
that's amazing.
I have Josh and Stephanie Tarnofsky, and they are crushing it both individually and both together, and so we're going to dive into this conversation. So thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having us. We're excited. And as a family, too. It's our first family radio.
First one I've ever done, too. So
cool. We're just winging it.
First for everything, right? Yeah. You know what? It's funny. Earlier before you came in, I talked about what's the trait for having a good partner. And I was talking mostly on the professional side, but I feel this can apply on the personal side. One thing I said is resiliency. But alongside resiliency, how do you know if you're resilient is how adaptable are you? So you just said a statement that this is the first ever baby live personality. And for me it is too. And I didn't trip about it because I was just like, all right, let's just do it. Let's just adapt and let's just go with the flow. Because if you assume that it's gonna be crazy and strenuous, then you're already setting that intention. Or if you're assuming it's gonna be amazing, okay, then you're setting yourself up for under expectations potentially. But if you're setting yourself up for like, hey, I've never done this before and I'm gonna grow from it, boom, that's a growth mindset. For me at least. Don't you think?
It's huge. Yeah, it's everything in my opinion. That's business in a nutshell, man. Get in and do it and keep adapting from there.
Well said.
Life.
So Stephanie, I know plenty of Josh's stories, so I want to spend a little time on you first. You are, for the record, you can't, I didn't tell you this offline, you can't swear on radio here.
Oh, thanks.
So you can't say that. So, because there might be bad, you know what, you might want to say. Because when I think of you, I think of that name.
I think Steph is like
Disneyland. Bad beep women entrepreneur, and I don't want to like say, in case you're like, I have this bad beep course or program for beep women entrepreneurs. I'm like, sorry.
No real beep, so we'll have to beep it ourselves.
Perfect.
Awesome.
Okay.
So tell me about your background. Like, how did you get into what you do now?
Oh, wow. Well, I got into it just because I was simply unhappy with where I was at in life in every area. Like, it wasn't like, oh, I'm a little bit overweight, or oh, I'm, not happy in my relationship. It was like across the board, I was just completely unhappy. I was in a job I didn't like, was not making enough money, was in a relationship that was just not working, and I was like trying to make it work. I was like gaining more and more weight every day. I was 30 pounds overweight.
What?
Yeah, I just kept gaining, and it was getting out of control. And I was just like, something has to change. I don't like my life. I remember I had this like defining moment where I was at my job, and all of a sudden it hit me. I was thinking, oh my God, is this what I'm gonna do every single day for the next like 80, 100 years of my life? And I just thought, I don't even want to be here if this is what my life will be like. So something has to change. And then it was just a series of like beautiful things that kind of happened since then, that guided me along the path, but I was open to receiving them,
So what was the first type of self-growth thing that you kind of mastered where you're kind of like, oh, this new me or this new mind, this new shift is working? What was it specifically?
It was 100% my body.
Okay,
so my
body's
weight,
big to you.
My body, yeah. And that is really the primary thing that I coach on. I coach women on weight loss.
Okay.
And I learned through the process myself that I always thought, oh, it's just how much you work out and it's how good you eat, and that's how you lose weight. And I tried doing that and it didn't work. And I just was this consistent like yo-yo up and down, and my body was never where I wanted it to be. And I was like, there's got to be something more. So what I coach on now, and what I learned that I was missing then, was there's this belief system that we have about our bodies that we get when we're young, and we get it from listening to our parents talk about our bodies or their bodies or other people's bodies. We listen to the media, yeah, and radio. So I love that you're bringing so much like good to the radio, because a lot of times like our media sources are bringing us stuff that brings negative beliefs, especially for women, about their bodies. So that was the defining point for me, was realizing, oh my gosh, I need to look at what my beliefs are about my body. And when I did, weight just started like stripping off of my body. I was like, what? It's not supposed to be this easy.
So thank you for that. But I would say too, regarding media, I feel when it comes to the body, and I'm talking from, I can only talk about things that I can relate to, like I've done myself. So I think Josh has known this, but in like since in the last few months, I've not only dropped in my weight, but I'm healthier. And for me, but the healthier part came from learning to understand my body, learning to understand certain types of exercises, certain types of foods that aren't normally talked about in traditional media or stringent fallacies. So I'm not advocating paleo, keto, or whatever. I'm advocating just food that kind of like a growth kind mindful eating, in the sense like what works with your body. And when I started to realize that certain foods, certain things, like for me right now, I'm all about swimming. For me, swimming is like my jam, to the point now where I'm like 5 days a week into it. And is swimming harder than HIIT training that I can handle? No. Is swimming from a news media standpoint the most effective thing compared to like HIIT training or other stuff? No, I wouldn't say so. But for me, it aligns my body better than anything else.
Yes, and you know, that is what I always teach the women that I work with, and for men too, it works exactly the same. I just primarily teach women, but I'm always telling them that your body will benefit the most from the thing you're most excited to do. So sometimes we think, oh, I need to go do that like really intense HIIT workout or CrossFit or something to like really train my muscles in my body. But honestly, our brains are so powerful that if we got out there and did a hike or a nice walk or a swim, and we were just thinking about the muscles that we wanted to tone, and we were actively contracting them as we do it, we would change our bodies even better than if we went to a CrossFit class or a HIIT training class.
Wow. Okay.
And some people love CrossFit and HIIT training, so that's perfect for them.
That's perfect for them, exactly.
Yeah.
Like for me, it's I'm curious, from a food standpoint or exercise standpoint, what did you eat or specifically do to have you drop that 30 pounds? Besides the mindset and the belief, was there any foods or exercises you did that worked for you?
Yeah, well, you know, honestly, it was really unprogramming what I was eating, because I was, there's a term called orthorexic, which is like an obsession with healthy food. So you get so into eating healthy that you just like overdo it. And learning nutrition and all these different things, I was just like, no gluten, no sugar, no dairy, like plants, organic meat, you know, all that stuff. And all those things are wonderful. That's a wonderful way to eat. Everybody needs to find their own way of doing it. But for me, it was like, I was taking it to the point where it was causing me like shame and judgment and guilt and criticism about like, what am I going to eat next? Yeah. And so it was like causing more stress than good. So it was really like letting go and just saying, I'm going to eat what I want to eat for once. And I just let myself do that. And most people think that by letting yourself eat what you want, you'll just go like totally, you know, off the handle and just like be like Cheetos and pizza and burgers and stuff. And it might be like that in the beginning, but you find that by giving yourself so much grace and love, that all of a sudden you feel so good emotionally that you start wanting to make healthier choices. Wow. So you just start gravitating to the food that your body naturally wants. You'll be in the grocery store, you'll be out and be like, I just really want, you know, like salmon with a little bit of cucumber in this. Or I just want like completely vegan meal right now. So it's actually really cool that our bodies will tell us what they need once we give it that kind of love and remove all of the shame about I have to eat this way or I have to do this certain diet or do this certain thing.
Okay, well, that's good to know. Thanks for that little update on how you got to where you are, and that's amazing. 30 pounds?
40 pounds actually. I was 30 pounds overweight then, and then
I look like it.
Yeah, right? It's a long story, but I lost that 30 pounds, I gained it back, and then I gained 10 on top, so it was 40 pounds total.
And let me ask you something. Let me ask you something, Josh. By the way, yeah, you can talk that way. No worries.
Oh, thanks. Yeah.
Yes. What did you talk about your journey specifically? Like, you know, how did you really discover that having a good mindset and being more aligned with yourself is something that, you know, works for you? Like, where are you at in your life? Like, let's talk about before you two met. I want to kind of focus on this growth side of Josh. How did it develop?
Before Steph and I met?
Yeah.
That's cool. You know, my father passed away when I was 20, and I ended up taking over the family business. And this business was, you know, massively in debt, but it was a very successful business overall. Good cash flow, great, you know, base of clients. And so I took over this business, and I just had this mission to make this business, get it into the black, do it right. And throughout this experience, I had no prior business experience, no idea what I was doing. You know, I had no, I had no counsel around me. I had no mentors. I just threw myself in the fire and did it, right? And somehow along the way, I became extremely successful in it. And about 5 years into the whole experience, you know, I'm paying down all the debts, paying back the arrearages, getting into the black finally, and it's time to start thinking about other stores and other opportunities and just growing. And somebody asked me, well, how in the world did you do this? Because it was, on paper, it was physically impossible. And I started thinking about it, and it really honestly took me about to now, which is almost over 10 years, to really understand what was happening. But every time that things would get chaotic to the point that you couldn't physically make something happen, it wasn't manageable, I'd take my dog and I'd go to the dog park and I'd sit there for 2 hours. You know, and I just kind of get in that mindful space. At the time I wasn't practicing mindfulness or really meditation, but I would get in that space, and when I would come back, things would just be done. Things that I had wanted to put in motion, things that I had been kind of orchestrating, but you couldn't, I was squeezing it too tight when I was there every day, right? Putting that chokehold on it. And so I started to notice this pattern over the maybe 5-year period as I was reflecting that was my major key to success. Is like, yeah, I was doing the things day to day, but then there was also this balance where I was letting things breathe and letting things flow. And, you know, midway through that journey, a 10-year journey as a restaurateur, I also gained 40 pounds myself.
What?
Yeah, man.
So between the two of you, it's almost 100 pounds.
Yeah.
Can you imagine these two? Look how fit they look. I'm talking to the person who's taping us here. Can you? It's hard to believe, right?
They look good, yes.
Because you don't have, like, you know, some people that just lose weight, you have these stretch marks, and I'm not insulting anyone. I'm just being real. Like,
I understand, man.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful
crazy,
it all
man.
came back like the way it did. Because I look at pictures, I'm like, how in the world is that even a thing for me?
Yeah, we have a pretty interesting before and after photo.
Totally.
You'd be like, what?
So yeah.
I'm sorry, well, to say, and so, you know, I went on this whole journey myself and really got more into what I call it Eastern philosophy. You know, I wasn't taking a lot of these Western approaches of certain diets and certain fitness in maybe the way that we're all prescribed it through the current media in this country. And, you know, I just always had this intuitive acknowledgement that things needed to change, and I couldn't just go to the gym and eat perfect and that was going to be it. I don't know what that was inside of me, but it was just a voice in my head. You know, those were all tools, but not the end result. And so between my business success and ended up going through my own weight loss journey, you know, I really found that I had to change my entire paradigm of the world that I was viewing to really create that success in both those areas. And that's what allowed me to basically find success accidentally. You know, I really did just stumble into success, but now I can look back and say, oh, there was a pattern, there was a system, and I can apply that moving forward to all my clients and all the people that are curious how I did it. So it's really fun.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. One more question for you is like, what is when did you start to apply this stuff in your life, and when did you start to realize it worked? Because you talked about studying Eastern philosophies, you talked about making the decision. Like, give me an example of like when it started to work in your life.
That's a great idea. So when I moved to California, I decided to close that first business I had because I just realized it wasn't my passion, it wasn't my dream, and I felt like I was going to die doing something I didn't love. So I literally just put an ad in the paper to my town because it was a pretty successful business. You know, it's a small town. I said, hey, we're closing down 2 weeks.
Successful is an understatement because I went back to Kentucky and people were like, I would pay $100 for one of those sandwiches. We would love them.
It was a New York style deli.
Oh, cool.
Everything was homemade. You know, we're cooking around the clock. It's just like good old like country cooking mixed with some New York style flavor.
Okay.
It was in Kentucky, so you're talking like a New York deli in Kentucky. This is before like, you know, things started booming in the chain world, and So, you know, I shut that thing down. I told everybody it was going to be 2 weeks, and I just took off. And I ended up in California a year later. Had no idea where I was going, what I was doing. Had left all my comfort zones. Literally just left everything behind. What are you doing over there, man?
What do you need, buddy?
And so I ended up, you know, joining this group of people that were emotional intelligence counselors. And I started to study this approach more to life.
Yeah.
And, you know, it was the first time they'd asked me the question, what do you want? And I realized that not many people ever really asked that, at least in the circle I was growing up in. What do you want? And so they would ask me that, and I couldn't even answer it. I was like afraid to even talk about it, or I was shy, I was embarrassed of these big, massive dreams I had. And so I literally wrote them all out on paper, you know, that couple months I was working with these people. And like, I started to see over the next 6 months and year things coming to life that I just never even imagined were possible or attainable in that time period. And I started to notice that it was those times when I was mindful and I was focusing and I was expanding my vision and I was really allowing myself to listen to what my intuition was saying versus just trying to do what I was reading in all the books or what other people were telling me to do. And literally, I just started to see things happen like that, like nonstop. And so I realized that was a huge part, was this mindfulness component of taking time to figure out what you want, to really like detach from all the conditionings of the society that maybe you grew up in, and really start to create the world you want to create.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds great. We're gonna take a quick break, but in a moment we're gonna dive further into their journey and what we can learn from each other. So stay tuned. We'll be back on in about a minute. Entrepreneur Nation on KUC 80.9 FM in Irvine. Thanks.
What's the matter? Think he wants milk or something?
Thank you.